right. Thanks for tuning in to another baking video. I would not say this one's healthy at all. But we're gonna be making some soft caramels, and then I have a Yankee praline recipe, which is very similar to like a maple candy, but with dried fruits and nuts in it. I do recommend if you're going to be working with candy, I know it's a pretty hot thing, but long sleeves, because if it bubbles and bursts and stuff and you get it on your skin, it does burn pretty bad. So try and keep long sleeves on. So definitely not a summer activity. Second, also a wooden spoon. Anything silicone or rubber or plastic is going to melt in these pots. So make sure it's wood. So with that, I think we'll bounce right into our soft caramels. So the recipe calls for 1.5 cups of sugar. So there's sugar. Sweetened condensed milk is 210 grams, and you can measure it actually with the milliliter side on your measuring cups, your liquid measuring cups. It might not say 210, but if you measure it between the 200 and 225, that'll get you roughly in the right spot. So we'll just drop that right in there. And then also 120 grams of water. If you go a little bit over on the water, that's okay. It's just going to kind of boil out at the end of the day. So you want to make sure that you're using a pan that's a little bit bigger than you think that you need, because this is going to kind of bubble up and rise a bit. So you want to be careful that it doesn't boil over. So that's why I'm using a pan that's probably a little bit too big for this recipe. So we're going to start this out on high heat. To prepare for this recipe, I have a square-shaped pan that's lined with parchment and sprayed down. That's what we'll be pouring it into at the end of the recipe. And then in the meantime, I will scale out the corn syrup. This is 250 grams of corn syrup.
I noticed there's dark corn syrup and light corn syrup. Does it matter which one?
I always go for the light corn syrup. Dark corn syrup has a little bit more of a flavor to it. It's kind of like molassesy, sort of. So I always go for the light one. The recipe technically calls for glucose syrup, but that's hard to find and difficult to work with, and I don't find it to be necessary. So corn syrup is pretty much the same thing, but a little bit lighter.
And corn syrup does have an expiration date, as I found out when I was looking through my own cabinet. Mine was about 3 years old. So be sure to check your expiration dates.
It probably wouldn't have been that bad.
I'm thinking no. I mean, what is it? It's like syrup, but
it's like honey and maple syrup. Like, it's mostly a suggestion, but you could probably use it and it would be fine.
I think I did use it in some cookies, but I figured,
yeah,
I keep chancing. Not cookies for our members, cookies for my family. Let's see, Kat, we have, we were talking about maybe for in person next time, maybe doing creme brulee. Okay. That would be a fun class.
That's what I originally wanted to do for this month, before we went back to online classes. So I know one of our last in class session, somebody said they wanted red velvet something. So that was my hope that we could do a red velvet creme brulee maybe. But St. Patty's coming up. Maybe like a creamy mint one would be good too.
That sounds good. I suggested the creme brulee.
Yeah, it's kind of trying to combine a couple of ideas, but I love making brulee.
Or vanilla.
Yeah. Yeah, we could go basic with vanilla. That would be, I mean, it's whatever anybody wants, so.
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting for this pot to come up to a boil. We're starting to get some steam on it now. You want to make sure that you're mixing it pretty constantly, scraping the bottom of the pan. Just because the condensed milk that's in here will burn a little bit if it's not mixed up. All right, so we just got to a boil. So I'm gonna add in the corn syrup. So you're gonna give that a mix around. So we're gonna wait for this to get up to 230 degrees. Generally, it gets up to about 220 pretty quickly, and then it takes a few minutes to get it from 220 to 230. So you just got to keep a good eye on it. I don't think you can see it in the video, but right now the caramel is about halfway up the pan. So that's why I suggested that you use a little bit larger of a pan.
Do you use a candy thermometer?
You can use a candy thermometer, or a digital thermometers actually will go up to 300 degrees. So for most candy making, you can actually use the digital thermometer just fine. So right now we're at about 225. You can kind of tell when it's starting to get there, when the bubbles start getting a little bit smaller, and it's staying pretty level. It'll turn a little bit creamy of a color rather than like the really milky white color. So we're at 227 right now. Once when this hits 230, I'm gonna pop in that stick of butter and mix it around. And then we'll keep on mixing it up until it hits about 243, and then we'll add our flavorings and dump it out into our pot and then wait for it to set up. All right, 230. So the butter goes in. Just keep on mixing that until the butter's all melted. And this is spitting a little bit, which is why I suggest wearing long sleeves. So you really want to make sure you're protecting yourself from any splatters. Once when the butter goes in, it's going to start developing a little bit of color. So we kind of went from a creamy color to sort of like a sandy looking color right now. You can kind of see the stick of butter is still not entirely melted yet. It does take a minute or two to get it fully melted, and then we can go back to temping our caramel. While you're mixing, sometimes the bottom of the pan, you'll pick up like tiny flecks of what kind of looks like it's burning, but it's not actually. It's just how the sugars in here are caramelizing. So it's okay. Just keep on mixing, and they'll sort of combine with everything. we're waiting for this to reach up to 243. All right. We got to the right temperature. I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to take it off the heat. We're going to add in about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I always eyeball my vanilla, but I'm going to go for just like a quick second, you know. I'll mix that up. It's going to sizzle pretty good. That is okay. Just keep on mixing.
Good arm workout too, because you do a lot of stirring.
Yeah.
See, it's still sort of healthy baking.
Yeah.
You do an upper body workout.
And then once when this is pretty much done and it's not bubbling up anymore, we can pour it right into our pan. So it goes. I'm gonna save this spoon to work on the next recipe, but when you're done, you want to make sure you get it right into water, or else it'll get very difficult to remove. And then I also just have some sea salt that I'm going to sprinkle on top. And then we're going to put this aside and wait for it to set up. Does anybody have any questions on that one before I move on to the pralines?
No,
Okay. Then we'll move on. So we're going to start with the Yankee pralines. It is 3/4 cup of sugar. I have a 1/4 cup of milk and 1/3 cup of heavy cream. And then a 1/4 cup, or no, 1/2 cup of maple syrup. If you guys make this recipe at home, feel free to customize what sugar, what nuts and stuff you're using. You can do switch it out for pecans or any other kind of dried fruit. You could even do like cocoa nibs. It's really up to you to play with whatever you want to toss in there. All right, we're going to turn this on to high heat. Butter goes in the pot too. So this is maple syrup, sugar, milk, heavy cream, and butter. We're gonna heat this until it's about 230 degrees. At this point, while it's melting, you can heat it up, but once when it starts boiling, or you can mix it up, but once when it starts boiling, you kind of want to let it do its thing and just sort of like gently mix it around. All right, butter is almost melted. Let it go. Right. So the pot is coming to a boil. And this one also kind of climbs up the pan a little bit, which is why I'm using a little bit bigger of a pot than I actually need. So right now we're at 220. And for this recipe, you want to make sure you're using real maple syrup. The fake kind doesn't crystallize the same way. We're sitting at about 224 right now. It's just a little bit longer to go.
It's bubbling. See where it said it gets splashy.
Yeah, I definitely, when I was making these in college, got burned a few times, and they aren't pretty. They blister right away. So you definitely want to protect yourself.
And a super nice long wooden spoon.
Yeah. So we're at about 228, between 228 and 9. Hello. 230. Now we're gonna add in the walnuts and cranberry. And we'll keep on mixing that until it hits about 237.
So then if you overheat it, does it risk burning?
What's that?
Does it risk burning if you kind of overheat it?
Not too much. Sugar actually can go to really high temperatures. Really what you risk doing is if you heat it up too much, is it getting really stiff. Not quite being like as soft as you want it to. And it'll kind of, where this is gonna sort of like dissolve and be really crumbly. If you were to heat it up any further, it might get sort of like crunchy.
Okay.
I gotta go somewhere, but I'll catch this on the recording later, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Okay, bye.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
All right, so we remove that from the heat. We're gonna wait for this to kind of settle down and get to about 212. I'm gonna kind of just let it do its thing. I do have set up a station. You can do these on sheet pans, or you can just put a parchment right across the counter, which is what I'm gonna be doing. And I have the corners kind of secured with cups, so that I can just scoop it and put it right down onto the parchment.
Definitely smells nice in here. On our previous onion set.
This one we're just kind of like gonna gently fold until it gets to the right temperature, so that we're not causing it to crystallize before then. Just kind of want it all to touch the air so that it has a chance to cool down a bit. So we're looking at about 220. We got a little bit more to go. that is 212. We're gonna add in a little drop of salt, about a quarter or half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. I add that in while it's cooling down, because vanilla extract is made with a lot of alcohol in it, which means that the flavor will kind of dissipate if you add it into something that's too hot. So that's in, and then we're just gonna start mixing it. And eventually these sugar crystals will start to form. And it'll kind of have like this maple candy texture. So you're looking for it to get kind of like a creamy color. Start getting a little bit thicker as you mix.
Arm workout continues.
Yeah, this one's even worse than the last one.
Karen's health and wellness tip would be make sure you switch arms.
A little bit longer. You can kind of tell when it's getting there when you're scraping the edges of the pan, and it sort of sounds like sandy. So this is good.
Or you're just too tired to stir it anymore.
Yeah. Once when the caramely parts of it stop filling the bottom of the pan, they sort of stay where you put them. Is about good. So we're gonna take this over and start dropping them onto. So I just have a cookie scoop, but you can do this with a spoon as well. You'll just take a little bunch. You kind of want to do this fast because if it cools down, then the mixture isn't going to move as well.
Do you need to spray the scoop or anything, or you can just scoop it?
Nope, you can just scoop right into it.
So while we said it wasn't really healthy baking, we do have the craisins, we do have the walnuts.
Yeah, there's nuts, there's
So,
fruit.
It's a stretch to
syrup
call
is
it healthy this month, but
better than sugar.
we're just gonna call it baking with cat. Some months it's healthy baking, some months it's just baking with cat.
Yeah. Baking's kind of hard to be healthy sometimes.
True.
All right, and then we let those set. So, and then this is our caramel, which is not quite set yet either. It needs to come all the way down to room temperature, and then it'll kind of like harden up. The top of it will have a skin on it. But I leave these overhangs of parchment on it so you can just lift it up and put it onto a cutting board.
Cool.
Yeah. So I don't know if everyone wants to stick around for this to set up, but when you're cutting your caramel, you want to make sure that The board that you put it down on is well oiled. Same with your knife, because it will stick to the knife a lot. So I just do one cut at a time. And I either spray it with like pan spray, or I'll just have like a little cup of like canola oil on the side and I'll just rub the knife with it. That way you can make nice clean cuts and you don't have to worry about it sticking. Yeah.
Sounds good. Everything looks good and smells delicious again here. So stay tuned. Hopefully next month we will be in person. We'll be paying attention to what's going on in the Monroe County area. And if we can do class in person, like we said, we will be doing a creme brulee. So be sure to check out the sign up for that. And I think that's it. I hope everybody enjoys their sweet treats.
Yeah. Let me know if you make these, because I would love to see pictures again. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.